Hello and welcome. If this is your first time here, my name is Courtney, and in today's video, I'm going to be covering a topic that I was so interested in when I was first starting my spiritual journey, understanding how crystals work, manifesting with the moon, and learning some astrology. And this topic really left a big impression on me as I was getting closer to the age 30, and that is a Saturn return. Maybe you've heard of it before, maybe you haven't. It's kind of a big deal in the astro world, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over what a Saturn return is, why it's important, and what you can expect based on the experiences that I've had with my first one. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. So chances are, if you are watching this, you may be getting closer to your Saturn return, or maybe you're just really interested in this topic and you want to learn more about it. Regardless, I am so excited to dive into this topic with you because I find it so interesting, and having gone through it myself, I really do have a lot to say. For the flow of this video, I'd love to dive into what Saturn energy really is, how it shows up in our lives, how it influences our energy, and once we have an understanding of what Saturn energy is, then I'll be diving into what a Saturn return is, why it's important, expectations, and give you some advice based on my own personal experiences. Before we dive in here, I just want to say, first things first, that your Saturn return is going to be a spiritual experience. There is something so magical and yet thrilling about this time in our life. There is a reason why there is so much hype, why so many people talk about this. And to me, it's because we all come here with a divine plan, and we don't know how it's going to unfold, but there will be pivotal points in our life journey that set the tone for the next big thing in our life to happen, and that really is the Saturn return transit. Okay, let's talk about Saturn energy. Saturn is the planet of discipline, structure, order, and authority figures. Saturn's energy influences us by taking responsibility of our actions. It's a reminder that we are in control of creating our reality by what we do, what we say, how we survive and act out in this world. I would say Saturn definitely has a harder energy, kind of like a tough love. Saturn really wants us to succeed. Saturn is known as the teacher planet and is ruled by the sign Capricorn. We all possess Saturn energy in our birth charts, and depending where Saturn is in your birth chart, that's how you can know when to expect your Saturn return. So now that we've gone over Saturn energy, let's now jump into what a Saturn return is. A Saturn return happens every 29.5 years. When you look at your birth chart, you can see what zodiac sign Saturn falls under. During a Saturn return, the planet Saturn returns to the same spot in the sky it was the moment you were born. Now, Saturn is one of the slower moving planets in the sky. It takes Saturn about 2.5 to 3 years to move out of one zodiac sign. So when we think about all 12 signs, it takes approximately 30 years for Saturn to orbit around the sun. During our lifetime, we can have up to 3 Saturn returns, one in our late 20s, one in our late 50s, and one in our late 80s. When we are about due for a Saturn return, we can start to pick up on feeling really big influences. Because Saturn is the teacher planet, it is really here to teach us lessons, and we kind of go through this rite of passage into adulthood, if you would say. Now, what's cool about this is that depending on what zodiac sign Saturn is in your birth chart, you can kind of pick up on what themes and influences you might experience during your Saturn return. So for example, right now, Saturn is going to be transitioning out of Aquarius and into the sign Pisces. Now, this affects us all collectively, even if we aren't going through our Saturn return, because we are all going to be feeling the same theme of Saturn in Pisces. Pisces is a dreamer. Saturn here is really giving us this motivation to take the necessary actions to make our dreams a reality. If you're having your Saturn return as Saturn is in Pisces, you may be dealing with the themes of understanding your emotions better, dealing with your own personal self-healing journey. And honestly, an underlining theme of spirituality will really take place during Saturn in Pisces. So why is this such a big deal? Why is this such a big thing? Our Saturn return is a time when we feel the influence of working with our divine plan. What do we really want out of this life? We may feel like we are really at a crossroads at this moment in time. As we reflect on the time frame of when Saturn return shows up in our life, right? We have that first one, which is the one that occurs in our late 20s, which I've heard is the most challenging and that it does get a little bit easier the more we have. But if we're just honing in on that first example, our first one in our late 20s, one may notice, a time when we all collectively feel pressured to have our life come together, whatever that may mean. And this can really show up in our life with making sure we have a really good job, or that we are making a lot of money, that we have a partner, that we're in love, that we're engaged, we're getting married, or we're having a baby, I'm starting a family, or I'm gonna be buying a house. All these different kind of aspects show up that are big transitions in our life. It's like major adulthood, right? Now, this is one side of the Saturn coin where things can feel like things are coming together. There can also be this feeling that things are falling apart. Things can get extremely hard because there needs to be an adjustment on what you truly want in this life. This time frame can bring major self-reflection on why you don't want certain things in your life, or why you do want these things, but they haven't happened yet. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing if you don't want them or that they haven't happened yet, but it's gonna be way more in your face at this time. Your Saturn return is a helping hand inviting you to level up in your life, however you want to level up. It is a time when Saturn will guide you in creating the life you desire most by boosting your stamina and the hard work to get you there. Alrighty, so I would love to now transition over to talk about my own personal experiences with my Saturn return. I literally just came out of Saturn return. My Saturn was in Aquarius, so I'm definitely celebrating that I did it. So I'd love to share some advice and just some expectations during this time. And the first thing I want to say is that during your Saturn return, you can expect the unexpected. Maybe, my Saturn return coinciding with this pandemic was just part of this major redirection in my life. I can definitely say that the things that I was manifesting before my Saturn return have literally become my reality coming out of it now. I truly believe that Saturn return is helping you get into alignment. And something that I thought was really funny was that during my own personal Saturn return, it was during the year 2022. And to me, it was just, that year was all about alignment. It was angel number 222. So it felt like a major synchronicity for me going through my Saturn return and having this theme of redirection, alignment, change happening so much. One aspect of my Saturn return that was majorly influenced was my career. And I think this is very common for anyone going through their Saturn return. Your career is majorly put on a pedestal during this time. A lot of change can happen during your Saturn return regarding your career. You can lose your job, become unemployed, get a big promotion, have a completely different career change, have a major blessing happen during your career during this transit. Really, almost all of these things happened to me during my Saturn return, and I definitely just want to put out there that your career will definitely be influenced during your Saturn return. Something I also want to mention, I don't want to skip out on, is that Saturn energy is also heavily influenced with karma. It's very karmic. Saturn is very, very karmic. And one thing that I took note of that I've heard about Saturn return and just collectively amongst a lot of people is that I've heard that if you grew up and had a hard childhood, it was very difficult, around the time when your Saturn return happens, you can notice things really gelling and going very easily during this time. Personally, I don't have experience with having a really hard upbringing, but this is just something I took note of and I've heard of, that your Saturn return can really bring a lot of blessings into your life if you had kind of like a hard upbringing. Another really funny thing that I've noticed during my Saturn return is how much older I feel now. It's so funny because I really feel coming out of my Saturn return right now, I really do feel like I'm a lot older. I feel like I'm not really in on like what's cool or trendy or anything like that. For the first time in my life, I was really faced with that during this, Saturn return, like not knowing the lingo, just seeing how like Gen Z is, or just how young kids are these days. You definitely feel that disconnect during this time, which it's not a bad thing. We are all gonna get older, but that's just one thing I didn't really expect coming into my Saturn return and coming out of it, is that, wow, I feel a lot older now. Really, my biggest advice for anyone going through their Saturn return or about to start their Saturn return is that all of the hardships and really tough times that you may experience during your Saturn return are really for your growth. They're for your skill set, for life lessons, so that they can really enrich the rest of your life in so many ways, so many aspects. You'll see how these things happening helped you in life in ways that you would have never thought of before. It's also a time to not put so much pressure on yourself if you don't have X, Y, and Z by a certain time. Like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't exist. So definitely let that pressure come off of you, because it will be more in your face during this time, but how you respond to that is what matters most. This return is truly such a magical time, and I know that can be hard to believe because we do go through so much hardship, so much personal growth, and really facing a lot of things we don't want to necessarily face. But, getting older is part of the human experience. And this period, no matter if it's your first one, your second one, or your third one, I promise you is going to be a beautiful time. As I wrap up this video, I want you to imagine the dream inside your heart. Envision that picture of yourself living the life you desire most. You can achieve it, even when countless obstacles show up in front of you. Your underlining belief in yourself and what you can do will light the way towards your destiny. Alrighty guys, so that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. If you liked today's video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you are new here, I would love it if you subscribed. If you have gone through your Saturn return, maybe your first, second, or third, I would love to hear any advice, tips for anyone out there that's reading the comments. I'm sure this is definitely a topic that we can all learn from. So if you have something to share, please, please, please don't be shy. Again, thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see you in my next one.